One of the most common questions I get asked is what camera and lenses do I need for product photography? What about all the different lighting options and diffusers? I know how overwhelming it can be when looking at options out there, especially in the early stages of product photography. This video is breaking down camera gear recommendations as well as other things you'll need like lighting, diffusers, backdrops, and props. Every YouTuber out there is going to tell you that gear doesn't matter. Gear does matter, especially in product photography. Imagine what your client would think if you charge them thousands and shoot their products on your iPhone. Yes, your phone can take amazing photos, but in product photography, details matter. Accurate colors matter. And if you're not using decent gear, you won't be able to create the best photos, and in turn, you won't be able to charge as much as other photographers. Now, do you need a $5,000 camera? No. But for $1,000, you can build out a kit that'll make you more competitive in product photography. By the way, if you're new here, my name's Chris Pieta. I run a production company and teach product photography and creative business here on YouTube. Enough about me, let's get into the gear. The gear you use is going to matter. When you're starting out in product photography, it can be overwhelming by all the choices out there. There are $500 cameras and there are $5,000 cameras. There are zoom lenses and primes. There's flash, there's continuous lighting. There's a lot of different options to choose from. My approach to product photography is to keep it as simple as possible, especially when starting out. There are so many things to learn along the way, and keeping the gear aspect of it simple will allow you to learn more about the important things like how to style products and how to run a product photography business. Although we want to keep it simple, we still need a real camera. Your iPhone is not going to cut it when you want to sell your services. At the same time, you don't want to spend too much on a camera when you're starting out. As a product photographer, your camera isn't the only gear you have to buy. If you blow your entire budget on an expensive camera but can't afford other equipment, your photos aren't going to look good. Product photographers need other gear like lighting, diffusers, and backdrops to style their scenes. Before I tell you what brands to buy or anything, I need to address this first. The camera brand you buy doesn't really matter. All these companies are competing against each other and they all make great cameras. It doesn't really matter if you spend $1,000 on Sony, Canon, Fuji, or Nikon. You're gonna get pretty much the same thing. These companies need to be priced so that they can compete with each other. They all have great cameras at the same price ranges. A $500 camera from Sony will be the same as a $500 camera from Canon. A high-end $3,000 camera from Sony will be the same thing as a $3,000 camera from Nikon. So it doesn't really matter what brand you pick, they're all good. At the same time, there are minor differences between these brands. But at the end of the day, these minor differences won't make you a better photographer. The camera you use is just a tool, and you can learn to use any tool to produce incredible results. So with that out of the way, let's get into the gear. As of June 2022, these are my recommendations. If you're watching this a couple of years down the road, go with the next gen at the same price point. Alright, so camera. All the cameras I'll be talking about today are mirrorless cameras. We're going to go through a few price points. At the budget price point of $500 to $700, there are a few options. At this price point, you'll be limited to cameras with an APS-C sensor. This is a smaller sensor than the more expensive cameras. The cameras at this price point will allow you to shoot fully manual. This is what you want. You'll be able to control aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. These cameras are going to have great autofocus and also manual focus that allow you fine-tune your focus for certain shots. Resolution here is going to be in the 24 megapixel range, which is great for product photography. I always recommend the Sony a6000 for this price point. If you can get your hands on it, it's great. At the time of making this video, we're going through a chip shortage and camera manufacturers are being affected by this as well. Pretty hard to get a Sony camera right now, and if you can't find the Sony a6000, the Canon M50 Mark II is also a great option. Now at the next level up, around $1,000, we're going to have slightly better low light performance and better autofocus. Here I recommend the Canon R10 or the Fuji X-T3. Now for those with a lot of money to spend, at $2,500, the Sony a7 IV is going to be your best bet. This is a fantastic photography camera and also an amazing camera for video. For 9% of you, the beginner cameras I recommend will work fine. And like I mentioned, you don't need to stick to my recommendations either. Almost any camera in that price range is going to be fine. Just make sure it's mirrorless and has an interchangeable lens. Now, onto the lens. Most camera bodies don't come with a lens, and when they do, the kit lens just sucks. Lenses can also get pretty pricey real quick. Typically, zoom lenses are going to be way more expensive than a lens with a fixed focal length, also known as a prime lens. Since you're just starting out, I'm only recommending primes today. What prime lens is going to be best for product photography? You're going to want something around 50 millimeters. If you're buying an APS-C camera like I mentioned earlier, the focal length that's written on the lens isn't the true focal length the camera sees. The crop sensor is going to zoom in a bit, so you have to multiply the focal length on the lens by 1.6. So if you wanted a photo to look like it was shot on a 50mm lens, you would need a lens around 30mm for your APS-C camera. 30 times 1.6 equals 48mm, so this will be your sweet spot. I was really confused about this whole crop factor thing when I started out. I'll link an article down below if you need more help on it. The reason why why 50mm is your sweet spot is because it gives you a little bit of compression. It allows you to get some depth of field when needed, and it doesn't distort the image like a wide-angle lens does. Wide-angle lenses can make products look weird and not resemble their real-life form. Product photography, you want everything to look realistic since these companies are trying to sell these products. If you ordered something online and it looked different than what the photo looked like, how would you feel? The one drawback of the 50mm focal length is overhead shots. 50mm is still fine for overhead shots, but you'll have to get the camera up a little high depending on how much of your scene you're shooting. I still recommend the 50mm focal equivalent as your first lens, and over time you can buy a wider lens if you find yourself shooting a lot of those overhead wide shots. As far as specific lenses, you want them to match your camera manufacturer. If you're buying off Amazon has a tool built in that lets you make sure that your lens matches up. If you're buying a Sony APS-C camera like the A6000 I mentioned, I recommend getting the Tamron 35mm f2.8 prime lens for $200. This is going to be the best option if you're on a budget. There's going to be more lenses linked down below as well, but it's going to depend on the camera brand that you buy. Now, we got the camera, we got the lens, next we need a light source. Option 1 is using a large window in your house. Natural light can be great, but it's also unpredictable. Your white balance will vary, and if it's a cloudy day, the shots will vary in exposure as the clouds roll by. As far as lighting goes, I recommend you start with a continuous light instead of flash. It's easier to learn, and when you're starting out, there are so many different variables. Make it easy on yourself. You can always learn flash down the road. I recommend the Godox SL60 as your first video light. It's powerful, robust, and it'll serve you for a long time. It's about $350 and well worth it. If you're really on a budget, the Godox SL60 is an okay option that'll give you decent results. It's about $150. With lights, you're going to need a stand, preferably a C-stand to hold them up and position them to your liking. These are about $100. Next, you'll need some sort of diffusion. Honestly, when you're starting out with this stuff, you can get away with just using a shoot-through umbrella. You can get one of these for under $20 on Amazon, and they work perfectly fine. And that's really all you need. There are a few additional accessories that you might find useful. Number 1 is a tripod. There are a lot of good budget options on Amazon that'll work fine to start. Newer makes some good ones. Having surfaces to shoot your products on will be very important as well. You can get a backdrop paper like I have for around $20 to $30 a roll, and they have a lot of different color options too. If you want to get fancier, you can get some textured surfaces, and these will transform your photos. My favorites are from Ericsson surfaces. Those run about $200 each. I have a discount code down below if you want to check those out. There are other cheaper options out there as well, like replica surfaces or club backdrops. With this type of stuff, you do get what you pay for. And that's gear. Now, if you're questioning whether spending all this money is worth it, I know what you need to hear. When you spend $1,000 on a camera, that's going to put a dent in almost anyone's wallet. But when you're buying a camera for your photography business, spending $1,000 isn't as big of a deal as you might think. First, if you keep track of all your expenses and ideally operate as an LLC, you can write this camera off. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go download my free creative business checklist down below. When you write this camera off of your taxes, you're saving around 30%. Next, think of what you're using this camera for. You're doing paid projects for clients. The camera is going to be the key that unlocks higher paying clients because you can take higher quality photos. If getting a camera can be the difference between charging $500 and charging $1,000 a project, then after 2 projects, the camera will have already paid for itself. Remember, you're investing in your business. You're investing in you. If you believe in yourself and you know what it takes to succeed, then investing in yourself is a no-brainer. This is a lesson I learned early on in my business career, and every time I have the opportunity to invest money in myself, I take it. When you start making money with product photography, your camera is no longer a toy. It becomes a tool that helps you take better photos and help your clients more, and in turn, this will end up making you more money. I want you to get used to this type of thinking when considering business expenses. It's important to know where all your money is going in your business, and it's going to be up to you to make sure that the financial choices you're making are helping you grow. That's all I got today. My name's Chris Pieta, and I will see you in the next one.